The following is a conversation with Thomas Lintz. Thomas is the CEO of the world's largest online player database, Transfermarkt. The Transfermarkt platform is a portal that needs no further introduction, a place that every football fan, agent, coach, or football executive is familiar with. Welcome to the Director of Football show. I'm your host Vitasibizamales, and now, dear friends, here is Thomas Lintz. Englisch, weil die meisten Leute können das nicht auf Deutsch verstehen.
All right, let's swap to English. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for joining the Director of Football show. Thomas Lintz, CEO of Transfermarkt, the biggest data football portals in the world. Thomas, can you tell us about your journey in the football industry and how you ended up at Transfermarkt?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. And yeah, let's jump directly into the first question. So, how I, in the end, joined the football industry was basically from being a football fan. When I was studying at university in my hometown, Vienna, I started to go to third league matches on Friday evenings. And then I discovered this platform on the internet and saw that there is no coverage of the third Austrian league there. So what I did is using my weekends for entering the squads, entering the match schedules, entering the match reports for the Eastern Division of the third Austrian league. So that was kind of the first touch point with Transfermarkt actually. And so I did that. Transfermarkt is working pretty much like Wikipedia. So everybody can join the platform, can enter corrections, add data. That's what I did. Just like thousands of users still to do today. And that was, I think, in 2005. Like 2 or 3 years later, 2007, our founder, Matthias, he approached me. I was still a student back then and asked, okay, there will be the Euro 2008 in Austria and Switzerland. And his plan was to bring this German website he already had for 7-8 years then to Austria and Switzerland. And that's why he approached people from his community, and I was one of them. And so I just exchanged my student's job back then to become Transfermarkt's area manager for Austria. So I did this on a part-time basis, bringing up the Austrian version of Transfermarkt. And yeah, after that, I stayed with Transfermarkt until today. Later on, I moved to Hamburg, where our headquarters are. Became the head of internationalization, a topic which is still an important one for us. Then moved more into product development, community management, more organizing jobs. And at one point, it's some years ago, so it was 2017, Matthias approached me again and said, okay, there will be a time when Transfermarkt will be 18 years old, so grown up, and maybe that's a time for making changes too in the management of the company. And that's when I joined him as a managing director of Transfermarkt.
That's so you're starting from basically a student, and you ended up being the CEO of the company that has how many employees at the moment?
110, 120 all around the world.
Wow. Can you tell us about the story of Transfermarkt? I mean, how it started, and what are the ambitions for the future for the TM portal, as we call it in the Transfermarkt community?
Well, as I have been with Transfermarkt from the very start, I can only tell you what Matthias, our founder, keeps on telling. So he founded the company in the year 2000, so pretty much early days of the internet. And he was working in advertising business, selling homepages to local business. And so that's why he had the skills and knowledge for setting up websites. And he's a Werder Bremen fan, which is like 200 kilometers. I'm not exactly sure, but 100 to 200 kilometers away from Hamburg, where he lived back then. And he had problems getting information from local newspapers in his hometown where there were the stories about his favorite club. So that's why I set up a homepage, back then called homepage. Everything was a homepage. So a website, a portal nowadays, um, where he just opened the opportunity for people to discuss things like that. So, okay, who's joining my team? Was anybody hurt in the last training session? Stuff like that. So it started pretty much with the community. And the other thing, he keeps on telling that he had problems remembering all the names of all the players in the German Bundesliga back then. So he started to set up a database, filling the squad lists with the 18 Bundesliga clubs. And what he then realized is that people started to write him emails and say, hey, this guy's actually not a left winger. He's 2 weeks playing on the right side now. Please change that. This guy has grown for 2 centimeters. The other one has extended his contract, and etc. And this grew and grew and grew. And at one point, then he said, okay, yeah, I'm going to bring in something like a correction form where they just enter the data directly. I'm going to check only the data that changed and click on yes to accept and publish that, which is far easier than answering emails and changing that hard in the HTML code. And that's pretty much the very, very early story of Transfermarkt. And then it began to grow and grow and grow, because then you had users like me saying, okay, there's one league missing. Can we enter the league too? Then the idea of internationalization came with it. Then we added more and more product features like betting game, a manager game, ground hopping list, whatever you can think of, because we always tried to really find out what the users want, what they're interested in, what can help them being a football fan, or help them in their football fan life, um, or help them in their Transfermarkt data scouting life, and keep on trying to fulfill those wishes.
And what are the ambitions for the future for the TM portal? How do you see you guys growing? What are the ambitions? I mean, the company grew already so much, and for sure there's a lot of goals ahead for the future. Can you tell us about the next plan for Transfermarkt, like your version of Vision 2030?
2030, no, that's far away. So basically our vision is to always be the go-to place for football fans all over the world, to live out their football passion. So what that can be interpreted in many ways. What we see at the moment, and which topic that is currently very interesting for us and what we're following a lot, is going more and more international, because I think what we achieved in Germany so far, what we achieved in Austria, Switzerland, and other European countries, in the big European football markets, bringing the Transfermarkt thing into those markets, we are convinced that will work all over the world, and that's what we're working on, because we see that we won't compete with classical football media, which in football countries there are a lot. If you think of Spain or Italy or France, even Germany, and it's not our aim to be the biggest German football portal, but we think we can be the biggest worldwide football portal with the special emphasis we have on facts, on data, on stats, on rumors, transfers. So football fans all over the world should go to Transfermarkt at one place if they are more into things like stats, like facts, more nerdy part, and that's our basic aim. And there's a lot of things you can do for that. So area managers for every country where there are football fans, maybe to internationalize all of our products. So at the moment, the website is pretty easy to internationalize. Our app, it's not. So there's a lot of potential things like that. So that's our main aim to spread the Transfermarkt world word all over the world?
It's I think it already is. For me, I look at transfer market as when you search for something, you go to Google. That's
Yeah,
psychologically. If you search for a player these days, I don't know anyone. The first thing you do is like you look on transfer market. That's I think that's psychologically already
exactly.
like set, especially within the European football community, and even here I'm
Yeah.
based in Australia. People look for players. Oh, I'm gonna check transfer market. So I think the goals that you have with transfer market is already you're already succeeding in that big time.
Maybe let me just comment on that, and I think that's true. Yeah, because I think credibility and liability is something which we did well throughout the past 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I see, it's like the data is like I have no idea how you get the data sometimes, but it's extremely accurate compared
Yeah.
to others, which is
Yeah.
something unique. And that's why I think people use their first search when they look for a player or they look for information. Like you said before, the more nerdy things in football, how important is Transfermarkt in the day-to-day operations for a football club?
I can answer to that question with a little story. We had difficulties with our web servers last year in August, in the middle of transfer window, and we were offline for 10, 12 hours, and our phones rang, and there were people, a lot of people, even from clubs, from football agencies too, that said, "Hey guys, you need to come back online. I can't do my job without you." So that pretty much sums up how important it is. I think to elaborate a little bit on that, I think we're, as we said before, we're kind of the to go to place in the first place when somebody is checking on football player information. It's most of the time it's about players. Um, we're very well aware of that, but we're also well aware that in football clubs they use more sophisticated software too. They have scouting softwares. They buy more data from data providers, which there are a lot of. When they go more into depth, um, whereas I think for the overview and for having everything at one place, we are the to go to platform. That's what we are used for. So I think it's important for first information, for the overview, for staying informed, and as soon as you need more sophisticated, more infos in detail, for sure they will use scouting software. They will have their scouts bringing in videos. That's something Transfermarkt doesn't offer because, first of all, we are a platform for football fans and not for sporting directors. But we're happy that they're using that too.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's more or less like the first point of contact for any information on a player. And I can say transfer market after our conversation, we're like 50 minutes in. I would describe then transfer market by the impression you gave me: for the people, by the people.
Exactly, yeah. That's one of the claims you could stick under our logo and it would work, yeah.
Okay, I will use that as a slogan. The thing that made transfer market, the thing that made it, in my opinion, was the market value of the player. It's the feature that was like, wow, it triggered you, especially when it all started back in the days. And I remember it from, wow, it's more than 15 years ago that I first came
Yeah,
on
it
the
could be.
website. How do you determine the value of the player?
It's kind of a process. But first, I'd like to say I'm not 100% sure that it's only the market values that make it, because I think there's a lot more of data, and I think something like you may not think of, but something like contract data that we're collecting, those is also very important for certain people. But in the end, for sure, market values are always something which gives you a hint. Okay, how could I perceive this player? Where should I um, rank this player within a player ranking, stuff like that. So, and that's a very basic human thing to always have this. Is the one better than the other, and how should I look at that? So I see it's a cool thing. It's a very important thing for us too, because it also helps us from a product perspective, or sometimes to do those rankings in order just to give the user something where they can see, okay, these are the top 10. Take a look at them first. But coming back to your questions, how are they determined? There's another thing I'd like to say before, maybe important to understand. When we talk about market values, we're not trying to make a transfer fee forecast, but we are trying to estimate an inherent value a player has, and what's the value a player brings to a club if he's under contract with that clubs. Because so it's not a hard financial figure in terms of in terms of, okay, how much money can I earn by selling this good in the end. It's more like we're viewing the players as an asset, and that's important to know. So basically that's also, you said before, by the users for the users, or by the fans for the fans. It's the same approach with the market values. We basically, and to put it very short, we have people discussing them all the time, and
I know.
everybody's invited to discuss them. And on top of this process, that's the short form. Basically, you can discuss nearly every player, and there's moderation, there's rules for how this discussion should work. There's technical support we're bringing in, but in the end, it's opinions of experts, of football fans, moderated, brought together in a qualitative process, where in the end we're trying to find a compromise out of those discussions. Then we publish the compromise 2 times or 4 times a year, depends on the league, and then you can be sure that the discussion starts within a minute again. And that's the good thing about, so that all of those values are currently being checked, currently being criticized, currently being looked at, which makes them anything but only better.
Fair enough. Do you know? Actually, this is a funny thing. In certain countries, as I deal a lot with people in the football industry, in certain countries, if a player is not at a certain value, they won't look at they won't look at him. You aware of that, or not really? Or do you ever heard that story, or not really?
Yeah, I heard those stories, and we see that when it comes to the lower market values, there is, the thing is a thing. So I got these basic 50,000 euros or something. This makes a difference for us. We only start with market values when we see, okay, it's professional football they are playing
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
makes no
yeah.
sense for us. We're even covering German sixth league. So if I go this weekend to an amateur games, those players won't have market value. So
Yeah.
it's funny.
That's
Um,
obvious.
so yeah, that's what we see. But the other thing is, which is always very interesting too, is that a lot of non-professional players approach us and ask for having a profile created, because they say, if I'm not on Transfermarkt, nobody will take me for serious if I apply for a club or something. That's always a tough discussion because we see it from the other way around. We understand ourselves as somebody reporting on football out there, and therefore we say, okay, you will have your problem as soon as you are presented by your new club. If the club is playing in a league we are covering, and otherwise we're sorry, we won't add you. So we that's a discussion we know very well.
Makes sense. Obviously, I would assume transfer market is also connected to other databases within other countries, or for example, where you get your information from. And then I would assume that then there would be like a system that automatically then generates a player profile with the data available. No, that's what I would assume.
You mean that on Transfermarkt we're doing that
Now,
like that?
for example, let's say with a club here in Australia, I see a young kid from the under 17s. He's not in the system yet. And then he starts to, okay, he made his debut in the first team. He played 10 minutes. And then a week later, I
Yeah.
see, he has a profile. And what I then assume is like, okay, there are like other databases that are like, like that basically, let's say the federation published those details about the player, his age, his name, everything, and that rolls in then somehow, yeah, within computer networks, then it rolls into basically into the system. It's something that would automatically update all the time. That's what I assume, or is the misconception from my side?
No, no, it's not a misconception. Things like that can be set up, and for sure are set up. But that's not how we're doing it. Actually, we're not connected to any federation or continental federation system whatsoever. Um, we have those users out there that are taking care of the leagues, and if there's a new player playing in one match and they're filling out the match report, the next thing is, okay, this guy's missing. I'm gonna check on the player data first, set up the player profile, and then add it to our match report. So that's how we would do it.
For the fans,
So
by the
it's
fans.
always human made. Exactly. We're back again.
We're
That's
back
the
again.
core thing.
Funny fact. And do you know that in certain countries, certain clubs use the valuation a transfer fee for players, and court cases, I know a specific case of Romania, have been battled in court on TM valuations. I mean, I had a friend that actually went to court based on valuations because the court looked at that as evidence. Are you aware of that? You heard of that?
Yeah, we heard of that. Especially the case in Romania. I remember personally because I was the Romanian court. They wrote us a letter and asked for, okay, could you give us background information on what you're doing, how you're doing that, how should we understand what
Oh,
you're
no way.
doing, and we provided that information in that case. And there's more of that, and we have those financial auditing companies approaching us very often because they're doing the audits within the clubs, and they also want to understand, okay, how should I understand what are you doing, guys? Can I take that for my work? Can that be helpful? And usually it is. So we it's not that we have really close ties with them, but occasionally they're just approaching us and saying, okay, I'm checking this one club at the moment. They're using these figures. You have these figures. I want to understand. Can you help me? So that's what we're doing. Same thing is true for science. There's a lot of people in business administration or sports management at universities that do work with data they obtain from us. And we're trying to help there where we can, answer questions, provide data sets, whatever, because we think, why not? I mean, if I remember me being the guy entering data for Austrian Third League, how proud would I have been if I heard that in the end, what I am doing here on Saturday morning um, ends up in the end in a master thesis or something of some student somewhere. That's just cool.
That's cool. That's it. We all love a good story. In your journey at Transfer Market, what is a funny, crazy story you can tell us? Can you tell us about in the history of Transfer Market? You ever had like a director of football calling you guys and goes crazy, or some player knocking at the office door? My value has to be higher. Is there a funny story? For sure, you have one to tell us.
Actually, both of them you mentioned happened. So we had players knocking on our door saying, "Oh, I just flew in from somewhere in order. I need to talk to you because I need to have changes made in my profile." Um, that happened. We had sporting directors calling directly after market value updates and exploding. Um, but those things always could be sorted out in a positive way. One thing that couldn't be sorted out until today is that Cristiano Ronaldo is still blocking our Instagram channel. Um, and the story goes like that we published a list of the most valuable left wingers or strikers. I can't really remember. And Cristiano, not being the youngest player back then, was not number one on that. And then we tagged him on the posting, and he answered by a direct message and said something like, "Hey guys, this market value is ridiculous." And what we did, we answered with what we're doing with a stat. So we had this stat on our website where we filtered for, okay, show us only players older than 33, where he was by far the number one. And we sent them said, hey, within then you're the best and the most valuable. But he just said, okay, have fun with your valuations and never seen again. So that's probably the coolest story I can have. And
For
we're still
sure.
using those screenshots on every Christmas party.
The name of the podcast, the Director of Football Show, and in general, a lot of clubs make money by making money, making transfers. That's what a director of football is one of his is a part of his job that he has to do. That's how they generate the majority of the revenue. A site like Transfer Market, how does a platform like Transfer Market generates income? I mean, it would be cool if you could sell the players, but obviously you have other you have another way of creating revenue streams to to support the full time staff and part timers
Yeah,
within your company.
it would even be cool if we could just have 0.5% of all the transfers, so that would help a lot. But it's not the case. We are we are pretty much earning our money with ads on our web and app products. Pretty straightforward. The deal we see is we provide information, we provide tools, we provide news, games, whatever. Please be so kind, except that we're putting ads in between the contents, and that's basically our business model. Um, for us, it's sometimes it's easier to do not the plain web ads you have on pretty much every website today, but to go more in a football way, I would say. So we're trying to look especially for sponsors of football teams in order to have their sponsoring also being viewable on Transfermarkt on the players of the club they're sponsoring anyway. For example, sports betting is a thing which is very, very close to what we are doing, because a lot of people doing sports betting or playing fantasy football manager, things like that, coming to Transfermarkt, checking on stats and information. So that's also good companies to work together with. So that's our mainstream of income. The other thing we're doing a little bit in B2B business too. So our pretty it's been in place for quite some time. What we're doing is we're offering a premium service for player agents. Um, as if you go to Transfermarkt, if you go to any random player profile, you usually also find an information which player agent is the one working with that player. And if you click on that player agent, you'll have a list of all the players under contract with that agent. And what we are offering then is to have the player agents publish their contact data there, to publish their logo, things like that. That's where they're paying a premium fee for that, and also quite new, but already in place for I think 1 or 2 years now, is where we entered a joint venture with a company producing a scouting software for football clubs, where we help them with basic player data in the system.
Scoutastic.
Exactly.
Well, will Transfermarkt ever invest in a football club? And if you can advise a club based on your experience, what would the Transfermarkt team do differently than most club operators, but would do it and organize and run a club from the Transfermarkt perspective?
I like this question. First of all, I think we're probably not going to invest in some football clubs, because there's just more money in the football business that with the money we are generating at the moment, we probably won't be very successful. That's the one thing. But thinking of being or having our team, and when I talk about team, it's not only our employees, it's all of our users. If we had one team, I think we would definitely use everything that community can bring into a football club, in order to have the best decisions possibly taken. So knowing that we have users from all over the world, probably we would have the best scouting department of all clubs in the world. Probably we would have really, really good experts on tactics, on formation, on which player should play at the moment, things like that. How should the lineups look like? So what we do, I think, taking the community into all the decision making, because I think the wisdom of the crowd is very powerful and could take really good decisions also in this case.
Great answer. Thank you for that. Which is a football executive you admire, and would you think should be our guest in one of our next episodes?
Yeah, as I'm from Austria, my idea would be Christoph Freund, who just recently made his move to Bayern Munich, being the new sporting director there, replacing Salihamidzic and Kahn. He did a great job at Salzburg, where if you look at the balances he has when it comes to market value of the squad, when it comes to transfer income versus transfer expenditure, that's really awesome. And talking to him how he achieved all of that and now making this move to this certainly top 5 club Bayern Munich, that would be a very interesting thing.
Interesting. I got a final question. Normally, most of our guests are like, as you know, are like directors of football, and I always ask them, who's the best goalkeeper you ever signed or regret not signing. Now, to do it in a TM format, what was the highest valued goalkeeper ever on Transfermarkt?
That was Jan Oblak in 2019 when we valued him 100 million. And yeah, that's the question. No, that's the answer.
That's the answer. Thank you. Thomas, thank you very much for joining us at the Director of Football podcast. I hope I'll have the pleasure one day to meet you in person and possibly visit you at the Transfermarkt headquarters. I wish you all the best. With Transfermarkt during this busy time of the year for you guys. And then I would close. I basically would close it off with the thing that reoccur during our podcast is for the people, by the people, Transfermarkt.
Exactly. Thanks for having me. It was very nice talking to you.
Thank you.